Hello everybody, my name is Xander Elliott. I'm here at the UN Summit on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I'm sat with Melissa Parke. Hello Melissa.
Hello.
She is the Chief Executive of ICAN, that's the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. And well, yeah, really, we're just going to talk about what's happening here at the summit.
Yes.
So it seems quite an important moment for the TPNW. A report that was published on Tuesday, the Nuclear Weapons Ban Monitor, said that the majority of the countries in the world are supportive of it.
Yes.
But as I understand it, a majority of the countries haven't quite signed up yet.
We have 98 countries that have signed, ratified or acceded to the treaty. That means we're exactly at half the countries in the world have taken some treaty action. We only need one more to be in the global majority, but we already know that the majority of the world supports this treaty. We know that from General Assembly resolutions every year that up to 140 nations regularly express their support for this treaty. So it's just a matter of getting them signed up.
So what's the barrier to that final country signing up?
Different countries have different requirements, domestic requirements for joining treaties, and so and some countries don't have a lot of resources to put towards this. So as ICAN, we are there offering assistance to help with any technical kind of processes that they need help with, translations and so forth. And there are a number of countries that are on the verge of signing or ratifying, and we expect they'll do so this year. Probably in the high-level week during the General Assembly in September this year.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if it was in the near future. So fantastic. We'll keep our eyes open for that. Obviously, we are here. We have the majority of the world's countries to support, but there's a really notable absence of any nuclear powers. Like, they haven't sent any observers. A lot of the umbrella states haven't sent observers. It feels like from these nuclear powers, we're actually hearing a ramping up of pro-nuclear rhetoric in the UK and France. How can the TPNW hope to progress if we're hearing opposition from these nuclear powers?
Well, say that the whole reason for this treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons is because nuclear states have been refusing to comply with their international law obligations to disarm under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the older Non-Proliferation Treaty. And that sense of frustration that the non-nuclear weapon states have felt over decades about this failure to disarm, and other stakeholders like communities impacted by nuclear weapons use and testing and others from civil society, has brought about this demand for disarmament through this treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. And it's a growing treaty, it's a young treaty. It came into force in 2021, and we're at the stage of ratifications of this treaty that the NPT was at its stage, at the same stage in its history. So this was never going to be a quick fix, but it's about changing the norms. It's about making nuclear weapons morally and legally unacceptable to be used, and so that any country that retains them has a reputational cost to doing that. They pay a reputational damage, and that's the thing that the nuclear armed states fear the most. The prestige that they feel comes from nuclear weapons. They can see it being undermined every day by this treaty. These countries that are now, in this week, been talking about the fallacy of nuclear deterrence, how it is a flawed theory that endangers the entire world. And non-nuclear weapon states, who are the vast majority of states, are saying they're not going to be held hostage to these nuclear weapons any longer.
So, under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which you mentioned there, the older treaty, which the UK, Russia, the US, these nuclear powers are signed up to, Article 6 says that they have to engage in negotiations on effective measures in good faith, effective measures to abolish nuclear weapons. The UK government, when I asked them about various criticisms that we've heard from other experts here, they said that the reason they're not engaging is because they do not believe that a nuclear-free world is achievable under the TPNW. That's their word, it's not achievable.
It's not achievable at the moment because they're refusing to engage. If they engage in it, it would be much more achievable. So, I mean, it's the very point behind the treaty is that these countries have been refusing to do what they should have been doing, and which they say is their ultimate goal, the total elimination of nuclear weapons, and yet they act inconsistently with that overall goal every day by clinging on to their nuclear weapons and insisting they're essential for their security, but no one else can have them either.
Yeah, fair enough. So moving more domestically then into UK politics, the Scottish government, which is led by the SNP, has been run by the SNP for 18 years, coming on 19. They've been pushing for nuclear weapons to be out of Scotland for the last 20 years, but there's been very little movement on it. The Scottish Secretary, I say very little, none. The Scottish Secretary, Ian Murray, he is the signatory to the ICAN pledge. Last month we heard some very strong words from him in support of the pledge, in support of this conference that's happening now. If Scotland's stuck in this limbo where all of its political leaders seem to be in agreement but the nuclear weapons are still there, how can it move forward?
Well, I think the Scottish people have it right here, that nuclear weapons are a risk and a terrible threat to Scotland. I've visited Faslane and Coolport, and I know that they are, there's various radiation leaks and all kinds of things going on there. That's putting the population at risk every day, even without the nuclear weapons being used. And so, I think it's important that Scottish people continue to speak to their elected representatives, and that Scottish leaders continue to speak in the UK about the need to eliminate nuclear weapons, because they make Scotland a giant target.
So, from the Scottish Secretary specifically, I just wanted to ask you about his words. Previously, last month, as I mentioned, he was extremely supportive of the ICAN pledge, of this conference. He has been a signatory of the pledge for years. But then this week he agreed with an MP who said that scrapping nuclear weapons would be reckless and threaten security. And he then added to a separate MP, Scotland needs all of its political leaders to proudly stand up for our defence industry. Scotland has led the UK on defence. It's been home to its nuclear deterrence since the 1960s. Is that statement compatible with supporting the ICAN pledge?
No. But I think, Europe is having a little bit of a moment right now, a panic attack, I'd say. So it seems from the outside. And I think there needs to be a bit of calm reflection happening, a few deep breaths, and start to think about what is really going to help Europe's security, collective security. And that's going to be having Europe as a nuclear weapons-free zone, essentially, as part of a global weapons-free zone, nuclear weapons-free zone, having talking about dialogue and diplomacy and disarmament. That's where Europe's security lies, not in this increase in confrontation and militarization and proliferation that can only lead to a one-way downward spiral to annihilation.
So within the SNP, we've started to hear calls for needs to move on their policy of unilateral disarmament. Yesterday, I think still technically on UK time yesterday, SNP grandee Ian Blackford said that they should instead look to multilateral disarmament. So rather than Scotland or the UK just getting rid of its nukes by itself, they would wait and everybody do it together. What's your response to that? What's the difference between those two policies in your mind?
Well, the TPNW allows for either approach. Countries can decide to unilaterally disarm, and they can do it before joining the treaty, or they can do it after joining the treaty, or they can do it with other nations. I think either way is great. I think every country should decide for itself that nuclear weapons are totally immoral and inhumane, and to decide to get rid of them on that ground alone. They shouldn't be allowed to exist. Weapons that can destroy all complex life on Earth. So you don't need other countries to do it to say you're gonna do the right thing. Do we have to wait for every country to end slavery or to end torture or to decide not to do it ourselves? No. But that being said, obviously 90% of the nuclear weapons are held by the United States and Russia, and it would be very good if those countries were to take the lead and to begin to dismantle their nuclear weapons. And indeed, we've just had President Trump repeating, saying over a number of months now, including yesterday, repeating these comments that he wants to see all nuclear weapons eliminated. Of course, we want to see action rather than words, but that's very positive. It's positive for world leaders in nuclear armed states to be talking about getting rid of their nuclear weapons. So bring it on.
It seems a bit of left field for Trump to be saying.
Well, you might think so, but actually he's been saying things like this for decades, even well before he was in politics. But he did say it repeatedly during the election campaign, and said it in a message to the World Economic Forum in Davos in January. He said it again in a press conference at the White House in February. And he also talked about the vast amounts of money being squandered on nuclear weapons that could be going to much better uses in all of these countries and in the world. So, those are sort of, it's as if he's been reading ICANN's talking points.
Maybe he has. So for me personally, last night I attended a nuclear survivors meeting, well, just the press bit afterwards, and I got to speak to some people that have had their lives directly impacted by the testing, by the use of nuclear weapons in Hiroshima. I found it quite an emotional experience. It was extremely, extremely enlightening speaking to them and hearing their perspective. And yeah, for me, that's definitely what I'm going to remember most from this week at the UN. I didn't know if you had a kind of moment like that, something you're going to take away with you that's really going to stick in your head, other than this interview, of course.
Look, because I talk to affected communities representatives a lot, I have a lot of those moments, and it's why we have this treaty. It was the testimony from communities impacted by nuclear weapons use and testing. So from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also from the more than 2,000 nuclear weapons tests carried out around the world, that we know the reality of what happens, what nuclear weapons can do to humans, to children, to the environment. We know this is not hypothetical, this is actually real. And what's more, those consequences endure. They endure for generations, and they go across vast distances. And this is an issue that is of concern should be of concern to every single being on this planet, because we all have a stake in this. This is not a subject that only experts, military people and security people should get to talk about. This is something that everyone has a right to talk about, when everything we love and everyone we love, could be killed in a nuclear war. So I think listening to the survivors, this is the 70th anniversary this year of the manifesto that Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein issued in 1955, where they pleaded for world leaders to remember their humanity and forget the rest.
Fantastic. Well, I won't keep you all day, Melissa. I'm aware that you're extremely busy, so thank you so much. We'll wrap it up there. And thank you everybody for watching and for staying in tune with all of the reporting that we've been bringing from the UN Summit this week. So yeah, thanks again, Melissa. Thanks everybody at home, and goodbye.
Thank you.